Let me thank everyone for coming as we discuss the climate provisions today and the environmental provisions in the Inflation Reduction Act, which, as you know, passed the House for final passage a couple of weeks ago and was signed by the President. I was fortunate enough to actually be there when he signed it. But I wanted to mention who's here first. First of all, we do have, I thought we did. Oh, you don't want to be behind us? All right. So we have from the city of Long Branch, my brother John, who's the mayor, and we have Billy Dangler, who's the councilman, and Anita Vogt, who's the councilwoman. They don't have title president, right? Somebody else is the council president. All right. Oh, Roses. Okay. And then also wanted to mention each of these environmental groups, and understand that without the support of the environmental groups and the environmental community, this bill would never have become law. So I want you to understand that. And so I have who will speak. So maybe I don't need to mention now, but I will. Doug, who's director of the Environment New Jersey, Angeli Ramos, director of the Sierra Club, Richard Lawton, executive director of New Jersey Sustainable Business Council, Meredith Comey, who's the Shoreline Restoration Director for the Baykeeper, Ed Potasnik, executive director of New Jersey League of Conservation Voters, Bob Spiegel from the Edison Wetlands Association, and Amy Goldsmith from Clean Water Action. But in addition to that, we have a few other people that are hanging out with us today. Karen Keene, Director of Development for Monmouth Conservation Foundation, Keith Boos, Environmental Justice Chair for New Jersey NAACP, Jody Stewart from the New Jersey Organizing Project, and two other people that are not speaking, but their groups are speaking, and that's Greg Rameau from the Baykeepers and Taylor McFarland from New Jersey, from the New Jersey Sierra Club. So I think that's everybody. Did I miss anybody? Oh,
New Jersey Conservation.
Oh, New Jersey Conservation. I thought. Oh, New Jersey Conservation is Amy Hansen from the New Jersey Conservation Foundation. Oh, and Citizens Climate Lobby. Okay, thank you. Well, why don't you guys? Those signs look nice. Why don't you bring them back here? Come over here. All right. Thank you. Okay. Also, I have to mention we do have a group of students and organizers from U.S. PIRG and Rutgers that are here today. Where are you guys? Where are they? Oh, over there. All right. Oh, wonderful. All right. So this is just great. Thank you so much for everybody being here today. So this the Inflation Reduction Act, as I think many of you know, but I'll repeat it. We passed everything that I'm going to talk about, most of what I am going to talk about, came through as provisions from my Energy and Commerce Committee, which I chair in the House. And we introduced a bill it's a couple of Congresses ago now in the committee called the Clean Future Act, which every Democratic member of the committee supported. And that was our response, if you will, in our committee to the problems with climate change. I mean, I'm going to just give me a little bit of reminiscence here. When I was the ranking member of the Energy and Commerce Committee, going back, I guess, 5 or 6 years ago, I introduced a resolution at the organization of the committee saying that we had to have hearings and address climate change. And that was summarily defeated along partisan lines because the Republicans on the committee said, well, there's climate change, maybe, but it's not human-induced, right? It has nothing to do with human behavior. It's a natural phenomenon, and therefore we don't need to have any hearing. So as long as they were in the majority in the committee, we could never have a hearing. They couldn't stop us from talking about it because at least it's still a democracy and there's still a First Amendment, right? But they wouldn't have any hearings on any aspect of it or move any legislation related to it. So when we took the majority, one of the first things we did was to introduce a bill called the Clean Future Act, which was a comprehensive bill to try to address climate change in every aspect. And all of you know this is very vast, right? It could be the transportation sector, the building sector, energy efficiency, I mean, the list goes on, right? Industrial sector, whatever. And we addressed all aspects of that. And so when we did the Build Back Better Act, which was the reconciliation bill that passed the House, most of the Clean Future Act was included in that, in all honesty, right? And then, of course, from some of the other committees like Ways and Means were the provisions, the tax credits and those tax provisions, which are very important. Probably the most important thing I could say, and I know it sounds like I'm tooting my own horn, is we knew that there were going to be problems with this when it got to the Senate. And so we sat down with Senator Manchin, and on the health side, we sat down with Senator Kristen Sinema. And we said, look, what are your problems with this bill? And can we work those out so that when we pass the House bill, it's something that you can support. Maybe you're not going to say you support it, but we know that it's language that you and your staff can live with. And so that was also true. So there were major changes from the Clean Future Act because we knew, and there were major changes from the H.R. 3, the drug bill, because we knew that we weren't going to be able to get support. And so when it finally passed the House, those provisions that came out of our committee were pretty much things that we felt that they could support. And so, like, people have said to me, well, how come when the Inflation Reduction Act finally passed, they didn't take out the things that were related to your committee for the most part? And I would say, well, because we worked those out with them, and so therefore there was no reason for them to take them out. So there's a lot of things in here that haven't gotten a lot of attention, and we don't have time to talk about them today. The bill is, I don't know how many pages, and my memo is 13 pages, and I'll put you to sleep. But I do want to talk a little bit about some of them, okay? And I also want to say two things before I start about the specific provisions. One is that this is not only fully paid for, primarily by closing tax loopholes, but also half of the money that's raised goes to deficit reduction, and that was something that Manchin insisted on, right? And so if anybody says to you, oh, we're spending a lot of money, actually we're not. I mean, we're spending money, but we raised more money so that half of it actually goes to deficit reduction, and hence the title Inflation Reduction Act, because if you reduce the deficit, is a definite way of trying to reduce inflation. And then the second thing I wanted to say is that, we've been promising for years, and I've actually was at the last two UN climate conferences, and there's one coming up, I think, in November in Egypt. We would go to the climate conference and we would say, look, the United States wants to participate, even though Trump was trying to take us out, never succeeded completely. And we want to do things that are going to have us reach our goal as the United States by 2050, right? And we also want to do a significant part of that by 2030. And these were some of the things that we talked about. So almost everyone agrees that this bill will put us on track by 2030 for a 40% reduction in our contribution to reduce, meaning the U.S.'s contribution to reduce greenhouse gases based on 2005, right? So we're pretty good, right? I mean, that doesn't mean, but I also want you to know that there's still a lot more work to be done. And part of when I say this bill, I don't mean just this bill. I also mean bipartisan infrastructure bill and other things we passed, but primarily this bill. So let me just go through some of the things that are important, and then I'll have the rest of the group talk about it. One of the most important things, and this was highlighted in the last climate conference in Glasgow, was methane pollution. The Glasgow conference concentrated on methane because they thought that a lot of people were primarily focusing on carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases that were coming from utilities, and the conference wanted to stress that methane pollution was the second largest contribution to greenhouse gases. And that was something that was definitely worked out with Senator Manchin, right? And it's significant. I mean, I don't have to tell this to people, but I'll say for the press that, methane comes when you drill for oil and gas. It also is a huge contribution to greenhouse gases when the refineries refine petroleum. So if you go, I always say, if you go down the Parkway, beginning in exit 10, or well, really exit 10, 11, or 12, I guess, you see at night the fires coming from the refineries, and a lot of that is burning off methane. So what this does is capture it, so it's not a waste product, and reuse it. And actually, it's like a carbon tax essentially, right? Because it says that you get penalized if you don't capture the methane. Okay. Then the other thing is basically trying to deploy low and zero emission technologies nationwide, and so that means research and new innovation, but also things like electric vehicles, batteries, trying to employ new technologies, and then renewable energy projects through upgrades to the transmission infrastructure, to the grid, but also here the tax comes into play, because most of the tax credits are essentially to encourage use of renewables, whether it be solar, wind power, other renewables. And then there's money that comes to the states and the towns. You asked me about bicycle. Well, you're going to have to apply for a lot of grants under this bill, all right? There's all kinds of grants that go to the states, to the towns, for anything that's going to reduce greenhouse gases, encourage people to use renewable sources. That's obviously into it, but that's not the we're talking about. And then also reduction of energy use through home energy efficiency. So, help to people that want to do more energy efficiency or renewables in their homes and businesses. So, but I do want to mention just a few more things, right? There's a $3 billion investment to reduce air pollution at ports and in frontline communities, environmental justice communities. We know, like, for example, in the Port of Elizabeth, New Jersey, major source of pollution, but it's LA, it's New York, it's all the ports, trying to address that. There's also $27 billion for a greenhouse gas reduction fund. This is really like the Green Bank, right? That so many of these guys have been talking about for years. I mentioned the $300 billion in tax credits. There's also things with regard to forestry and agricultural management to try to prevent wildfires and some of the natural disasters. But there's two more things that I want to mention before I end, and they're not necessarily climate related, although I believe that they are. And I'm mentioning them because this group of people here, environmental groups, have been working on these things for a long time. And one is the Superfund tax, right? So the Superfund, people always tell me, we're doing a Superfund cleanup at this location. Bob has been cleaning up Superfund sites with me for years, right? The reality is there is no Superfund, right? I mean, in a sense, because the Superfund was a tax or a fund that was on the chemical and oil and gas industry that was used to clean up the sites until 1994 when it expired. So what'd you say?
And it was a non-fund.
Yeah, and it was a non-fund. In other words, it was there, maybe, but it didn't. The money came from the taxpayers, right?
Trouble damages went away.
Yeah.
The ability to tax polluters went away.
Exactly. So, and he'll talk about it, I'm sure. But what I was going to say is that we've been using your tax dollars, your tax revenue that you pay through the IRS, to fund the Superfund cleanups. And it wasn't supposed to be that way. It was supposed to be done with this tax. So in the infrastructure bill that was signed last year, we restored the tax on the chemical industry, and in this bill we restored the tax on the oil and gas industry. And polluter pays. And this is for the sites that are orphan sites. In other words, where we don't have a responsible party. If there's a responsible party, then they have to pay or they get sued. But there are many sites where the polluter went bankrupt or they left town or we can't find them or whatever. And that's what this will pay for. And then the second thing I wanted to mention is living shorelines. Now, all of you know, most of you know that I'm a big advocate for beach replenishment. Some of you are not. Some of you are. We just announced Monday, guys, the beach replenishment bids went out for Elbron and possibly an option for West End too, guys. But I've also been a strong advocate that we need to have some what we call living shorelines. In other words, natural ways of trying to prevent erosion, and all the environmental groups are big on that. And we have done some of it in New Jersey, but not enough. The Baykeeper, where's Greg? You've been a big advocate for it. I shouldn't just mention you, but I know that you have been. And so in this bill, there's 2.6 billion. That's a lot. I mean, we were talking about tens of thousands of dollars when we were doing it, right?
Absolutely.
Now we're talking $2.6 billion to restore coastal habitats with living shorelines projects. Okay, so you're going to see a lot more of that, and a couple of you mentioned to me about Ida. Oh yeah, you did, right? From New Jersey out about Sandy and Ida. The Sandy out. Am I taking away your thunder?
No, you're not taking my thunder.
You know, because we're up to the what anniversary is it coming up now?
10th anniversary on Superstorm Sandy, and the first anniversary of Hurricane Ida is on the 1st of this month.
And so we of October, right?
October 29th.
Okay. So so the reason I mention that is because you know, obviously we feel two things. One, that by addressing greenhouse gases, we're addressing the problem with sea level rise, which is the reason that you end up having to do beach replenishment, right? Because of sea level rise. So maybe ultimately we don't see as much sea level rise, and we don't have to do as much, you know, in the future to prevent it. But in the meantime, we're going to move on these living shorelines options to try to deal with that as well. So I don't know, I could go on and I won't, because you probably said this guy already talked too long. But I just want to make the point that this is a big deal, and that we're just so proud of the fact that so many of these environmental groups have been involved in so many of these issues for so long, and it finally came to fruition. So let me start with Doug O'Malley, who's the Director of Environment New Jersey. This is in no particular order.
Thank you so much, Congressman. My name's Doug O'Malley. I serve as Director of Environment New Jersey, and I am so excited to be joined by the Congressman and all of our environmental allies from around the state. The passage of the Inflation Reduction Act is a big freaking deal for the climate, because the Congressman has been a leader on these issues his entire life, going back to college and doing conservation and blackout nights. You know, that was ahead of your time, Congressman. And you've been working, you mentioned the Clean Future Act, you've been working to pass legislation in the House your entire career. And whether that be Waxman-Markey, whether that be the Clean Future Act, this has been decades in the making. And your leadership as the chair of the House and Energy Committee, House and Energy and Commerce Committee, that does not go unrecognized back home, because a lot of the great provisions, especially the Superfund tax, which you've been working on since you were in the New Jersey legislature, that is progress, and that means a lot here in New Jersey. The Congressman just referenced the 10th anniversary of Hurricane Sandy, and Jody and Sandy from the New Jersey Organizing Project can tell you people are still not okay. They're not back in their homes. That changed the shore, and it changed the state forever. And unfortunately, the storms are getting worse. 2 days from now, we will celebrate, if that's the right word, and it's not. We will memorialize the 1-year anniversary of Hurricane Ida and the lives that were lost, the 30 lives that were lost across New Jersey because the unprecedented flooding. That is the price of climate change that we are paying right now. And it is appropriate that we are here at the Jersey Shore, because we don't have to wait for the next Sandy. We are seeing flooding right now. Our barrier islands are in the hot spots. Our cities are in the hot spots of climate change. And the Inflation Reduction Act makes historic investments. This is the biggest investment in the history of this country and arguably the world to fight climate change. $380 billion. That's investing in the investment tax credit and the production tax credit for wind and solar to power our economy with clean renewable energy. It's revolutionizing the investment to electrify our transportation sector, a $7,500 rebate for electric vehicles, $4,000 for used vehicles, $3 billion to electrify our postal trucks, $1 billion for our medium duty trucks like school buses. That is the change that we need. And we also need to be looking at home, and that's why there's $9 billion of consumer rebates to ensure that you can electrify your house, you can retrofit your house, you can electrify your stove. These are the things we need to do. And this bill will get us, not all of the way, but will reduce climate pollutants by 40% over this decade. That is a huge step forward. This is the start. We need to continue this revolution. We need to transition off fossil fuels. And the congressman referenced a Superfund tax. That is a $12 billion investment that is finally taxing the oil and petroleum companies for the pollution that they have created, and they need to clean up. And that's what this bill does. This bill is the best thing for New Jersey to fight climate change and clean up our polluted sites in history. And we need to obviously make sure we're continuing this progress. And I want to thank you again, Congressman, for everything you've done to make it this place.
Thank you, Bill. I promise not to talk in between each speaker, but I have to say two things. One is, if you notice that Doug really didn't repeat anything I said, because there's so much in this bill that each of us can go on for the next half hour and keep talking over about different things that are in the bill. But I just forgot one thing that I do have to mention, and that is that the bill reverses the Supreme Court case of West Virginia versus EPA. In other words, a lot of you remember, because in the June term of the court, there was so much of the media attention was on Roe and the abortion issue, and rightfully so. But one of the things that the court did was to gut the Clean Air Act and say that because Congress hadn't updated the Clean Air Act, that we couldn't regulate greenhouse gas emissions, which of course we disagreed with, because we felt the Clean Air Act had the flexibility to allow that. But in this bill, that's reversed. In other words, it makes it quite clear that Congress's intention was to allow the Clean Air Act and for the federal government, the EPA, to address greenhouse gas emissions. And again, who represents West Virginia? Joe Manchin. Who didn't take this out? Joe Manchin, right? So I don't know. I better watch. I actually think he's pretty good. So maybe I shouldn't say that. But whatever. All right. Next is Angeli Ramos, who's the director of the Sierra Club in New Jersey.
Hello, good morning, everybody. This is an amazing day. I'm so happy that we get to celebrate all together with all of you, my friends and colleagues, and with you, Congressman Pallone. I mean, Doug, what you just said about the history of Congressman Pallone fighting for environmental protection since the good old days, I'm so impressed, and I'm honored to be working with you alongside to protect our environment and to fight to make our communities and New Jersey stronger against the impacts of climate change. So, as the congressman keeps repeating, the Inflation Reduction Act is massive. It's huge, it's a monumental investment, and we would be here all day if we were to discuss all of the provisions and all of the benefits that the country and New Jersey will be experiencing thanks to this. And I just want to say that we are all witnesses of the struggle of those negotiations for over a year, and so much work that has to be, that you, Congressman Pallone, as well as other representatives had to really fight for this. This was a fight, and so I just want to say thank you again for that, because we recognize that it was a struggle. So we're just incredibly excited and happy to be here. You mentioned a couple of things. The methane provision I do want to highlight because it's one of my favorites. New Jersey, thankfully, we don't have any coal power plants in the state, and that's amazing. It's because of the fight of the environmental community and people recognizing how terrible and dirty coal is. But we do have a lot of gas power plants, and so these methane provisions in the IRA are huge. because methane in its nature is really volatile, and we don't really understand the big problem that it causes to our ambient air. It's a volatile gas. It's leakage all over the place from the different pipelines that we have all across New Jersey. So this provision will have a monumental impact to our state, because we will know more. Where do we need to fix this problem so that we reduce the amount of methane going into the atmosphere? The most potent, or one of the most potent greenhouse gases that we know. So again, from actually reducing emissions to make green energy accessible to the state, bringing manufacturing jobs, but not just, living wage. No, it's like actual really good income, really good wage for people to, prevailing wage for people to be able to sustain their families in a good way, good and decent way. It's bolstering a new industry in the entire country, but here in New Jersey, to making accessible for people to be able to go and buy electric appliances. You have up to 10 years to do this, and the government will give you the tax incentives. I mean, talk about accessibility and equity. And a huge part of this is that there's a huge awareness as part of a package to really let the families of this country in New Jersey know how to use these programs, how to use these incentives, and how to get educated on it. As mentioned by the congressman, the tax incentives, they can buy this, and this is going to provide a huge help for all of that. So equity, accessibility, prioritizing environmental justice community, addressing the problem of the Superfund sites in New Jersey, which we have over 100. We're the state with the most Superfund sites. I mean, it's just incredible the huge impacts that this is going to have in New Jersey. So I'm honored to be here with everybody to celebrate the Inflation Reduction Act, and I'm thrilled that I get to be with Congressman Pallone celebrating his huge accomplishment. So thank you, everybody, and this is not the silver bullet. Let's keep fighting, let's keep pushing, because this is what gets us to the next step and to a true green economy. Thank you.
But picking up on what you said and introducing Richard Lawton, who's Executive Director of New Jersey Sustainable Business Council, a lot of what's in this bill is incentives, right? Not mandates, but incentives. And in order for those incentives to work, the business community as well as homeowners have to get involved. So when I just want to keep in mind that when we talk about the Sustainable Business Council, the idea that the business community in many cases has taken the lead on sustainability. Of course, there are good actors and bad actors, but the good actors are part of the New Jersey Sustainable Business Council. So where is over there. Oh, come on.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Richard Lawton. I'm with the New Jersey Sustainable Business Council. We're a state affiliate of the American Sustainable Business Network. And on behalf of both organizations, I'd like to thank Congressman Pallone for everything he's done to make this happen and to pass the most comprehensive climate and clean energy legislation in the history of the United States. So thank you. So I have lots of good things to say about the law, but I'm going to focus on three key aspects that I think are important that will help make this successful in helping to speed the transition to a more just and sustainable clean energy economy. Starting with incentives. All companies, investors, and consumers respond to incentives. And over the long run, carrots are more effective than sticks in changing behavior and leading to more positive systemic change. So this law's set of well-designed incentives and financial green financing will serve to leverage and accelerate the turnover of private capital from dirty energy to clean energy. And just in battery storage alone, that will mean hundreds of billions of dollars in investment. So it's a lot of leverage. And our state, New Jersey, is already a leader in the development of offshore wind, in community solar, and the transition to electric vehicles. So these industries, along with battery storage, energy efficiency, and green infrastructure, are developing supply networks that represent huge opportunities for New Jersey-based companies in the future. The second key aspect of this law is constituencies. And this law is going to create a lot of them. In fact, all Americans will benefit from this law in one way or another, but especially those in low-income and environmental justice communities. But all of us will benefit from lower energy costs, cleaner air, improved public health, and also the reshoring and development of supply chains that will boost the creation of new companies and tens of thousands of good-paying jobs. In fact, a new report estimates that New Jersey alone will gain 11,000 jobs on average per year from clean energy development and add $1.3 billion in economic activity. And so while the climate benefits might take a while to materialize, the economic benefits will be felt by all Americans and businesses in the near term. So what this will do, this will contribute to the third key factor to success, which is certainty. This law can't and won't be undone with the stroke of a pen, regardless of who's the president. And as Americans begin to experience the law's economic benefits in their own lives and their own businesses, its continued implementation will depend more and more on market forces and less on politics. So combined with incentives, this increased certainty will further reinforce investors and companies' confidence to invest in innovative ways to generate, distribute, and store clean electricity, and also to use that electricity more efficiently in the future. All the companies in our network are doing everything they can to operate as sustainably as possible. But as Kermit the Frog used to sing, it's not easy being green, especially in a fossil fuel economy. But this law will change all that. This law will make it easier and more affordable for all American businesses and their customers to be green. So this is truly a historic moment. And so we're very grateful for Congressman Pallone's leadership and tireless efforts to make this happen. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, Richard. Next, I have Meredith Comey, who's with the Shoreline Restoration. Well, she's the director of Shoreline Restoration for the Baykeeper.
Thank you, Congressman. I would like to thank the Congressman for inviting Baykeeper here today to speak and to celebrate with all of you, our partners who have worked hard to bring this today to the celebration, the Inflation Reduction Act. One of the issues that are close to your heart is living shorelines and resilient communities. And as you mentioned, Congressman, this act will bring billions of dollars into that effort. One of the great climate change mitigation benefits from this act will be increased funding for living shorelines, for the science behind living shorelines, and implementing these resilience projects. Using nature-based features in place of the traditional, hardened bulkheads that, we see everywhere around here is critical for protecting our coastlines, especially our urban coastlines as you get up into the more hardened areas of New York Harbor and North Jersey. So I would like to again thank you, Congressman, for always having that fight. You've been fighting for living shorelines since the beginning, benefiting all of us environmental groups that have been working on it. Baykeeper's been working closely with our partners such as Monmouth University, Naval Weapons Station Earl, Monmouth County to get these projects into the Bay Shore, and this and identifying areas where this will be useful and helpful in protecting our coastlines. This act is going to allow for more of that and an increase in implementation of these projects, leading to a greater resilience for New Jersey and for our communities. There's a lot of work to be done, as everyone has said, and I look forward to working with all of you, and we continue working with you, Congressman. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for all you do with regard to shoreline restoration. It's so important. And now we have Ed Potasnik, who's Executive Director of the New Jersey League of Conservation Voters.
Awesome. Thank you, Congressman Pallone. I want to thank Mayor Pallone for the amazing weather. We appreciate it. And for you having us here in Long Branch. About 10 years ago, this area was under siege from Hurricane Sandy. The boardwalks were being ripped up. And then, as we learned about a year ago, Hurricane Ida was inland doing the same thing. So folks are still struggling to get into their homes along our coast and our waterways here. And on the other side of the state, people are still struggling to get in their homes. My neighbors in my hometown are not in their homes after Hurricane Ida. And that was yesterday. Today, we're celebrating a major step forward for New Jersey to protect us from events like that playing like a TV rerun. Because tomorrow, thank you to Congressman Pallone and his leadership, we're going to have the kind of action we need to meet the challenge that we've caused as humans. Climate change is human-induced, more frequent intense storms, and they're devastating our communities. But it's not just that that's in this legislation. We also have another, I would say, celebration of freedom, which is freedom from the oil and gas industry that has us literally over an oil barrel. They play like to page 12, international conflict in Ukraine or somewhere in the world, raise prices. And what are they doing at the same time? Record profits. The big oil companies are making more money now when we're paying the most, and the least of us that can afford it are trying to make ends meet. Our seniors, families struggling, and they're just raking in the money. And what this legislation does is it means that we won't have to be dependent on those international actors and folks in foreign countries to dictate what happens in our local economy. We can harness the energy of the wind that we're feeling at our backs to literally propel us to a future that's cleaner and more green and healthier for us. And that means the wind industry. So in New Jersey, it's nascent. There's $10 billion in this legislation for us to build offshore windmills that are responsibly generating energy through their turbines to power more than half of our homes. And right here, we're going to have the labor force that we need. People of color entering into the pipeline of jobs in the offshore wind industry, thanks to the leadership of Governor Murphy. That money will buttress or help us to lead and take on that challenge. These are good local jobs. These are high-paying jobs, and we're making sure they're more available to families that are diverse and people of color, and that's really amazing. And then one last thing I just want to mention is, the environmental justice community. In New Jersey, we have a lot of densely populated communities of color that have been like piled on with pollution, incinerators that generate energy on top of manufacturing, etc. There is $60 billion as a down payment to help reduce pollution in the most polluted communities, where if you live in Newark, you're 4 times more likely to have asthma than in the surrounding community. And Congressman Pallone stood up with his leadership of the Energy and Commerce Committee and made sure we could turn back the hands of time, racist environmental practices and policies that were supported that we can undo. And that's really important. So we're really proud to stand here today and celebrate freedom from the oil and gas industry. And I look forward to the things to come with Congressman Pallone at the helm of that committee. Thank you.
Let me introduce Bob Spiegel now, who's with the Edison Wetlands Association. And Bob, as you know, has taken a leadership role on cleanup of Superfund sites and brownfield sites. He just reminded me, John, that he was involved in the Troutman's Creek cleanup in Long Branch. And when Ed talked about environmental justice communities, so many of these Superfund and brownfield sites are in environmental justice, or I'm going to say minority communities, low-income communities, because they didn't have the ability to stop them from being located there. So thanks, Bob, and for all you've done to help, particularly with the restoration of Superfund.
Thank you, Congressman. Finally, my turn, and the podium doesn't break like it did the last time I came down. My name is Bob Spiegel. I'm the executive director of the Edison Wetlands Association, and our group is based in central New Jersey, but we work throughout New Jersey and beyond on cleaning up and restoring contaminated sites and helping communities of color. We work with Native American communities like Wayne Man and the Ramapo Native American community in Ringwood, communities that are directly impacted by Superfund and the lack of funding. But even though some of these sites, like the one in Ringwood, they have a responsible party, Ford Motor Company. The reauthorization of the tax actually gives EPA the ability to take over cleanups when responsible parties are not doing the job properly. It also has something called treble damages, which allows polluters, the EPA, to go after responsible parties for 3 times the damages. And up to this point, EPA was a hollow threat because there was no funds in the super fund. It was a fund without a super source. So EPA had no bullets in their chamber when they talked about enforcement. And we're working on sites like the Woodbrook Road Superfund site where, the past administration undid the cleanup, and EPA is now looking at not doing the cleanup there because of the past administration. And the one thing I wanted to say, Congressman, is with this Inflation Reduction Bill Act, it really should be called the Green Jobs Act, because there's going to be so many jobs that are going to be created as a result of not just the Superfund reauthorization. That in itself will create tens of thousands of good-paying jobs, long-term jobs, blue-collar jobs, white-collar jobs, engineering jobs. Just cleaning up the Superfund sites and cleaning up the contaminated sites is going to create millions of jobs across the country. So while this is called the Inflation Reduction Act bill, it really is green jobs. It's all about the green jobs for the future. And thank you for your leadership.
You mentioned, we have Amy as our last speaker, but who mentioned the green frogs? Did you? So, when I first met Bob Spiegel, we were at the chemical insecticide site, which was literally the dirtiest, most toxic Superfund site in the nation. Is where they made Agent Orange, and they just dumped it right there in Edison. And he said, and now it's a park. And he said, because of what Edison Wetlands Association did, but he told me, he said, I'm going to come and you're going to see the rabbits, and the rabbits are green because of the pollution. Of course, we associate green with good things, but rabbits are not supposed to be green. No. And I went to the site, this is like 25 years ago, and the rabbits were green, and they weren't dyed. It wasn't food coloring. They were literally dying from the toxic waste. And anyway, I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh because it really wasn't funny, but I didn't believe him when he said the rabbits were green until I actually saw them. In any case, so last but certainly not least is Amy Goldsmith, who's the Executive Director, that's your title, right, of Clean Water Action. Come on.
Thank you. So, thank you, Congressman Pallone. I'm a hometown girl in the sense that we have our office in the West End. I live in Red Bank, so I'm in your district now, and I'm going to be in your district again soon, right? Because you're coming back to my district. So I'm so excited about that. Clean Water Action is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. Our founding director helped write and pass the original Clean Water Act, hence our name. And fossil fuels are one of the biggest poisoners of our water in the United States. And so as we think about turning off the fossil fuels, we're also talking about the potential for cleaning up our water, drinking water, surface water, our fisheries, and the like, because as everybody knows, fossil fuel plants need a lot of water to run every single day. When we talked about the Superfund, I started at Clean Water Action 37 years ago in the Boston office, and my very first campaign was on the Superfund. The 14th worst Superfund site, the Baird McGuire Superfund site, had 100 of the 105 priority pollutants at that site. Many high school kids had lost their lives because they would roll in the toxic barrels. And that was when we got the community right to know. And we got the so-called permanent cleanups, not the kind of kitty litter cover and run kind of cleanups. And even so, it still takes 20 to 30 years to get a cleanup. So we're so thrilled to make those polluters pay. It's the thing that motivates me every single day, is make those guys and gals, and sometimes, pay what they need to do to clean up, to take care of the people, the communities, our agriculture, our health, and there are provisions in the Inflation Act around prescription drugs and other things. We have to remember that so much of the reason why we're sick is because of the environment. And if we can get rid of the fossil fuels, if we can clean up our drinking water, we can actually make ourselves healthier and actually, create a generation for the future. When we talked about diesel pollution is incredibly important to take care of. Why? Because like methane, it is a very short-lived and very potent climate changer. If we could get diesel and methane out of the air, we would make a dramatic reduction in global warming. Diesel pollution is black soot. It blankets our ice. It is the major reason why our ice is melting. That's why we have sea level rise. That's why we have the changes in our weather. Why is the Cape Cod up in Maine? Why are the lobsters in the Antarctic, and the Arctic? There's a reason for this. So if we can actually deal with these really, really super potent things like diesel and methane, we can make a really big difference. We need to turn off the fossil fuels in our environmental injustice communities, where the environmental injustice has been there for hundreds of years. We can't electrify the state on the backs of people who have borne the burden for 100 years. We can't keep those fossil fuels just because the plant was built, 5 years ago in the Iron Bound. We gotta turn it off first as we keep electrifying. So, hats off, Congressman Pallone. I'm so proud to work with you all these years. I'm so proud to be in Long Branch and have ridden my bike from Red Bank today to be with you and everyone else for the hard work. And I remember that first press conference we did on the Clean Futures Act at Monmouth University. That was a long time ago. These things don't come easy. I've been with Clean Water all these years. I'm going to keep on fighting, and I know everybody behind me will too. Thank you very much.
I think I would prefer to have concluded with Amy, because she said hats off to me, but I'm going to say hats off to all of you because of all you've done and will continue to do to make this bill and this effort to combat climate change a reality. So thank you all again. I don't know if there's any questions. No, I don't think so. All right. Well, thanks everyone for being here, and just continue the great work. Appreciate it.